They say your home is your sanctuary, the one place where you lock the world out. But what happens when the locks aren't keeping people out? They're keeping you in with them. I lived alone at the time. I was 28, working full-time, and renting a small house just outside the city. It was the first place I'd ever lived completely on my own. No roommates, no partner, just me. I remember feeling proud of that independence. I had my routines, skincare bottles lined up in precise order on the bathroom counter, clothes laid out for work the night before. Everything had its place. It was the quiet comfort of knowing exactly where every single item was. That precision is why the first thing I noticed wasn't a sound, or a crash, or a missing item. It was a subtle, cold shift. It was the feeling that something in my bedroom had been disturbed. Not messy, not broken into, just handled. Like someone had been there long enough to be careful. I opened a window and blamed myself for being tired. Over the next few weeks, small things kept happening. A drawer not fully closed, a chair angled slightly differently. My bedspread smoothed out when I knew I'd left it rumpled. Nothing missing, nothing obvious, which made it easy to explain away. But the moment I couldn't lie to myself anymore was the dresser. One drawer, the one where I kept my delicates, had been rearranged. Not emptied, not rifled through, just changed. Items no longer in the order I kept them. The silk nightgowns were folded differently. A lace bralette placed on top instead of underneath the cotton pajamas. It felt intentional and personal. That's when the panic hit. I checked every window latch, every door deadbolt, all secure. That's when I remembered the spare key, the one that my landlord had insisted I keep outside, just in case. I'd hidden it inside a magnetic box behind the breaker panel near the back of the house. I went outside and checked. The box was still there. The key was there. But it was no longer as rusty as it was before. It was a key that was regularly handled, carried, and used indoors. That's when I called the police. They searched the house, but found no forced entry, no missing items. I tried to explain the key, the rearrangement, the violated space. The officer looked unconvinced. I couldn't articulate that everything was out of place. They kept asking what was stolen, and I could only whisper, "My piece." After they left, the silence of the house felt like a heavy blanket. As I rushed to pack a suitcase, knowing I couldn't stay another hour, the violations became unavoidable. While grabbing toiletries, I saw the bathroom hand towel was damp when I hadn't showered. The soap dispenser was lower than I remembered. In the bedroom, gathering clothes, I noticed one pillow had been turned, not flipped over, but rotated, as if someone had just rested against it before tidying up. The thought of spending one more minute in that space, knowing that person had been comfortable on my bed, comfortable enough to fold my laundry, was unbearable. I grabbed the suitcase and bolted. I went straight to a friend's couch and stayed there, signed the paperwork to break my lease the next morning. I moved out 2 weeks later, abandoning most of my furniture. On the day I left, I stood in the empty house, the place I'd been so proud of. I didn't feel relief. I felt a cold, deep instability. The police closed the file. There was no closure. The physical address changed, but the feeling didn't. Years later, I'm obsessive about locks. I check them 3 times before I can sleep. Every time I open my dresser drawer, I check the order of the clothes. It still gives me nightmares that someone was in my home, breathing my air and seeing my life without me knowing. They were careful. They were quiet. They didn't break in. They simply accepted the invitation I unknowingly left for them. And that knowledge, it still lives with me. It doesn't fade. It just gets older and heavier. The violation never ended. It just relocated to the inside of my head. That is unsettling. It makes you wonder how many times we dismiss strange things as just the wind, and how hard it is to trust somebody these days. But in our next story, the scariest part isn't the intruder. It's how long the landlord knew about them. I need to explain the layout of the house first, because without that, none of this makes sense. This happened when I was 24, living in a rented split-level home in western Pennsylvania. The kind of neighborhood built in the late 70s. Curved streets, identical houses, unfinished trees. Quiet enough that you noticed when something didn't belong. The house had 3 levels, bedrooms upstairs, living room and kitchen on the main floor, and a basement that sat half underground with small windows at ground level. The basement wasn't finished. Concrete floor, exposed beams, washer and dryer shoved against one wall, and a door at the far end that led outside. That door is important because it didn't have a deadbolt, just a knob lock. Old, loose, the kind you jiggle to make sure it catches. The landlord told me not to worry about it, said no one ever used that door, said the previous tenants never even unlocked it. For the first month, I didn't think about it at all. I worked late, got home around 10 most nights, ate in front of the TV, went upstairs to sleep. Normal routine. The first strange thing I noticed wasn't scary, it was annoying. The basement light was on when I came home. I knew I hadn't left it on. I was careful about that. But I figured maybe I'd rushed out that morning. Or maybe the switch was faulty. I turned it off and forgot about it. 2 nights later, it was on again. Same light, same switch, same bright glow coming up the basement stairs. This time I stopped at the top of the stairs and listened. Nothing. No movement. No sound. Just that low electrical hum that lights make in quiet rooms. I went down, turned it off, and stood there for a moment longer than I needed to. The basement felt colder than the rest of the house. Not temperature cold, more like unused cold, like air that hadn't moved in a while as it was supposed to be. I came back up reassured. Few days later, I found muddy footprints near the drain. Partial prints, like someone had stepped just inside and wiped their shoes. I told myself it was mine, but I knew what my boots looked like. I checked the basement door that night. Locked. Tight. I jiggled it. It didn't move. That should have been the end of it. Instead, I started hearing sounds at night. Not every night, and not loud. A soft click, like the washer lid being opened and closed. A low thump, like something heavy being set down carefully. Always from below me. Always between 1 and 3 in the morning. I didn't go investigate. I stayed in bed and waited for the sounds to stop. And they always did. Until the night, they didn't. I woke up to the sound of footsteps on the basement stairs. Slow, deliberate, 1 step at a time. I sat upright in bed, heart pounding, listening. They stopped halfway up. I waited for the next step. It didn't come. Instead, I heard the basement door open. The sound was unmistakable. The scrape of old wood against concrete. The rush of cold air. Then silence. I stayed in bed until morning. When I finally went downstairs, the basement door was closed, locked. The light was off. Nothing looked disturbed. I called in sick to work and spent the day walking through the house, checking locks, checking windows, trying to convince myself I'd dreamed it. That night, I put a chair under the basement door handle. Not because it would stop anyone, just because I'd hear it fall. Around 2:40 a.m., I heard the chair scrape. Not fall, scrape. Slowly, like it was being moved. I held my breath, listening. The door never opened. The chair never fell. In the morning, the chair was back where I'd originally placed it, perfectly aligned with the wall. That's when I checked the door more closely. The lock was intact, but the frame wasn't. The latch didn't line up properly anymore. It never had. If you turned the knob gently and pushed, the door would open without unlocking, just enough pressure. That realization sat in my chest all day. That night, I didn't sleep. At 1:12 a.m., the basement light turned on. I was watching it happen, the glow creeping up the stairwell. I didn't move. At 1:26, footsteps crossed the basement. At 1:31, the stairs creaked. 1 step, 2, 3. Then they stopped again. This time I heard breathing. Not close. Still below me, but present. Patient. I grabbed my phone and turned on the flashlight. I didn't call anyone. I don't know why. Maybe I didn't want it to be real yet. I walked to the top of the stairs and shined the light down. The basement was empty, but the door was open, just slightly. I called the landlord to come to the house, told him about the door. He stared at it for a long time without speaking. Then he said something I still think about. He said the previous tenant complained about noises too. He just never checked where they were coming from. Nothing was stolen from my house. Nothing was broken. But someone knew how to come and go without being noticed. Never figured out what they wanted though. Didn't want to find out the wrong way either. I moved out within a couple of days. I don't think I could ever sleep in a house again, knowing someone was breathing in my basement while I ate dinner upstairs. Absolute nightmare. It's one thing when you are alone and can run, but when you have a family, a baby, running isn't always an option, especially when the voice coming through the baby monitor isn't your child. My wife and I moved into the house when she was 6 months pregnant. It was a quiet neighborhood. Older homes, big looming oak trees that blocked out most of the street lights. It was the kind of place where people waved from their porches but never came down to the sidewalk to ask you questions. The previous owners had already moved out by the time we closed. Most of the house was empty. Just a few things were left behind. Some shelving in the garage, a sagging couch in the basement, and, oddly, a baby monitor. It was sitting on a high shelf in the nursery, covered in a thick layer of gray dust. We assumed it belonged to the previous owners and forgot about it. Then, our daughter was born. The first few weeks were a blur, an absolute haze of exhaustion. Nights and mornings bled together until I honestly couldn't remember if something had happened an hour ago or yesterday. Somewhere in that fog, we decided to use the old monitor. It became just another part of the background noise of our lives. Breathing, soft cries, static. That constant low hiss. It fades into your brain until you stop noticing it, until it's just the sound of the house. The first time I heard something unusual, I wasn't scared. I was just intrigued. It sounded like movement. Fabric shifting against fabric. Heavy, like someone adjusting a thick wool blanket. I checked the time on my phone. 3:15 in the morning. I assumed our daughter was waking up, thrashing around in the crib, so I reached for the receiver to turn the volume up. The moment my fingers touched the plastic dial, the sound stopped. I went into the nursery to check on her. She was fast asleep, swaddled tight. No movement, no sign she had stirred in hours. I told myself it was interference. I didn't tell my wife. She was exhausted, emotional, barely holding it together some days. I didn't want to add more anxiety to that mix. Over the next few weeks, the sounds came and went. Never every night, never predictable. Once, I heard what sounded like someone clearing their throat. Very softly, a wet, guttural click. But when I went to the baby's room and pushed the door open, nothing. Just the baby, sleeping. Around that time, my wife told me the monitor sometimes picked up sounds, even when the baby wasn't in the room. She would bring the receiver with her while she was doing laundry or cooking, just out of habit. And occasionally, she'd hear faint noises, even when our daughter was right there, asleep in her arms. That night, while she slept, I decided to test it. I took the receiver off the nightstand and started walking through the dark house, holding it up to my ear like a radio. Living room, static. Kitchen, static. Bathroom, static. Then, I stood at the top of the basement stairs. The static dropped. Instantly, the sound sharpened. Breathing. Close. Right against the microphone. It wasn't infant breathing. It was the wet, heavy respiration of an adult. I took one step down onto the landing. The breathing continued. Not louder, not faster, just present. I stood there frozen. My heart was pounding against my ribs so hard I thought the receiver would pick that up too. Then, it just cut out. Back to static. I backed away slowly. I shut the basement door and locked it. That night I went upstairs, unplugged the baby monitor, and put it in a box deep in the closet. The house felt quieter without it. Too quiet. My wife asked why the monitor wasn't on anymore. I told her it was malfunctioning, that it was picking up too much interference from the street. She didn't argue. Even though she didn't fully believe me, I could tell she felt relieved too. A month passed. Life started to feel normal again. The exhaustion became manageable. The house felt like ours again, until the night our daughter woke up crying. I sat up. There was no sound on the nightstand. The receiver was still in the box. But as I walked out of the bedroom and past the hallway that led to the kitchen and the basement door, I heard it. Static. Faint. Coming from below the floorboards. The next morning, I went down into the basement and started moving things. I pulled the old couch away from the wall. I shoved aside stacks of cardboard boxes left by the previous owners. That's when I found the vent, hidden behind a stack of old magazines, a small, jagged opening cut into the drywall near the floor. Inside was a narrow crawl space. I shined my flashlight into the hole. Deep inside that crawl space, facing inward, away from the basement, was another baby monitor transmitter. It was plugged into an extension cord that ran up into the ceiling. The green power light was on. It wasn't ours. The police came. They took the monitor. They told us the crawl space connected to an old service corridor that ran behind the foundation of several houses on the block. It was supposed to be sealed. Mostly. They never found anyone. No prints, no sleeping bag, just the dust and the transmitter. As they were leaving, one of the officers asked me how long we'd been hearing things. When I told him, he just nodded slowly. Then he said something that still makes no sense to me. He said, "You know, whoever set this up, they weren't listening to the baby. They were listening to the house. The transmitter wasn't pointed at the crib. It was pointed at the main vent duct." We moved out less than a month later. We took a loss on the mortgage, but didn't care. I still can't sleep in total silence. I need a fan running, or any white noise. But I will never, ever allow a baby monitor in my home again. That silence in your house right now, it might not be as empty as you think. Subscribe to The Night Listener. Sleep well and check your vents.